some of those supporters as he makes his way over to his property here in Doral, Florida. But again, so much of this is fluid at the moment, trying to see exactly when he may exit the plane, when he might get into that motorcade, which could pivot around us here where we are standing as it makes its way out to the main road leading over to Doral. We heard earlier from the mayor of Miami and also some of the law enforcement officials who said, listen, we're prepared for anything. They want to reassure the public that they will keep law and order, even though there is a sense that there is possibly a sense that there could be some unrest, of course, when you're talking about people who are so impassioned in their defense of the president that may be out in the streets tomorrow, and also counter-protesters. One number that was thrown out was 5,000, but that comes with the caveat that they really just have no idea how many people may be out in the streets of downtown tomorrow around the courthouse because there are so many variables, including the weather. As you know, pop-up thunderstorms here in Miami will send everybody running for cover when they do happen.
Yeah, Manny, you mentioned Secret Service. They're on the scene, obviously, to protect the former president. That is part of the bill of assignments that comes following a term in the White House. And the special counsel pointed out in the indictment that the Secret Service were not guarding the alleged classified and highly valuable government documents that were at Mar-a-Lago. One question I have, when there are high security days in Washington, we now see, as a matter of course, the National Guard brings out the temporary fencing, hardens the perimeter. If you're aware, are you seeing that? Have you heard about that around the courthouse there or around any of the former president's properties?
Here's what we do know. Federal courthouses traditionally have very high security. I've covered cases where you couldn't even bring in your cell phone. So there are a lot of potential blockades that those federal courthouses already have in place to prevent cars, for example, from driving too close or driving through. We haven't seen barricades go up just yet. At least I haven't seen those in the time that I spent over by the federal courthouse. I haven't been there today. But our understanding from the briefing that law enforcement just had with the mayor is that they're going to feel this out. If they're getting a sense that it's a small crowd, they may shut down a few roads just to control the crowds. If they're getting a sense that this is going to be perhaps thousands of people, then they will do what is a unified command, have all of the policymakers, lawmakers, law enforcement, heads of law enforcement together in one room so they can all make these decisions together. And that's when they will continue to maybe block off more roads to try to get control of the situation. So it's a wait-and-see approach, but they do say that they have added personnel to all of the jurisdictions, all of the law enforcement entities that will be handling this, including the fire department, because even if nothing particularly bad happens, which is the hope, you have to imagine that with the heat that we have here in Miami this time of year, there could be emergencies. There could be protesters or people out there that could suffer heat stroke. You have to be able to get to them quickly, be able to get them to a hospital if that's what needs to happen. So those are all the things that are in flux right now that they are weighing, is how to best prepare for all of this, and keeping in mind that the area where the federal courthouse is, it's a downtown area. So like Manhattan, you have businesses there, you have residential buildings there. They're trying to minimize the impact on people who live in those areas, but they're making it very clear that given the size of the crowd that is expected, if it does materialize, people are going to definitely be inconvenienced by all of this tomorrow.
And just, Manny, going by the coverage of the last arraignment, looking at New York, looking at Miami, I mean, just for people who are not familiar with Miami, talk to us about what can we expect in terms of those crowds. What has been the mood? And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, Miami is where Enrique Tarrio, the former head of the Proud Boys, who was recently convicted, is from and was organizing. Talk to us about the mood there and what you're hearing from people in terms of whether or not they're planning to go out there in full force.
Well, when he was indicted in Manhattan, we were out at Mar-a-Lago, just outside his home there in Palm Beach. And every day there were at least a few dozen people that showed up to show their support. And on the day the indictment happened, there were possibly up to several hundreds that had lined the main route from the airport over to Mar-a-Lago. Here we are in a situation where they may be some of the president's supporters waiting for his departure from Trump National in Doral tomorrow as he heads to the courthouse. It's a bit of a wide area between Doral and the courthouse, so I don't know that you'll necessarily get people lining that route, which means that a lot of people may choose to greet the former president over at the federal courthouse, and that's the concern because, of course, it's a densely populated area that they may have to shut down some streets in order to maintain control. The difference that some have also pointed out between Manhattan and South Florida is that the president perhaps enjoys a lot more support amongst voters here in Miami-Dade County than he would in a place like Manhattan. So that's one of the reasons they're expecting perhaps more people to show up tomorrow in support of the former president. Of course, then you have the possibility of counter protests. The one thing we've heard over and over from the law enforcement and the mayor here in Miami is that, look, we want to respect everybody's First Amendment right. We want everybody to be able to go out there if they choose and express how they feel about this momentous occasion, but they're also going to have to enforce law and protect the safety of all these people. So if anybody is deemed to be a threat, you can imagine they will be quickly removed. That is just some of the calculus going into all of this because we just really don't know.
Manny Bojorquez, thank you. We'll let you go.
Thank you.
Donald Trump is traveling to Miami ahead of tomorrow's federal court appearance.
The former president is accused of not only mishandling classified documents when leaving office, but obstructing the investigations of a grand jury, of the FBI, of lying to the FBI. Trump is expected to be formally arraigned around 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Tuesday. He's then planning to leave Miami and head back to his golf course in New Jersey to deliver remarks.
Robert Legary is a CBS News justice and law enforcement producer, and he joins us now from Miami, where he must have been in the air conditioning because I don't see any sweat stains on his shirt. And as a Miami, and I know you're doing well if you have nothing to show for it. We've had some time now to pour through the indictment. What stands out to you most?
Right, so two things really stand out. First would be the specificity. There's a lot of specificity in these court documents from special counsel Jack Smith in which he discuss exact documents without revealing explicitly what they deal with that he says were allegedly found at Mar-a-Lago. The other thing is the specificity with which the former president is accused of knowing that those documents were there. We see communications between his former or his current aides at Mar-a-Lago about the documents, as well as understanding of the movement throughout Mar-a-Lago, both before and after the FBI notified them that they were coming to get the documents. So really, from the special counsel, a very specific court document with information that they're laying out their case. As we always say, these are allegations, but right now it is very specific and is very exact from the special counsel.
You know, there's been accusations that this is all political. There's been finger pointing at President Biden, at former Vice President Pence. But when you look at the charges, it's not just about having those documents. It's really hard to imagine, well, this is just political because there are crimes and evidence that's laid out in them. Still, we haven't heard from Attorney General Merrick Garland. Why is that?
So special counsels are appointed by attorneys general when those officials decide that the case is too political or too sensitive for the Justice Department to handle. And so the special counsel, or excuse me, the attorney general decided in late last year to appoint Jack Smith as special counsel. His reasoning for that was because his boss, President Biden, is running against Donald Trump in the Republican nomination. So to remove the Justice Department from even a whiff of politicism, the Attorney General said he was delegating the duties to the special counsel. Now, the Attorney General Merrick Garland also had another special counsel under his purview, John Durham, which ended earlier this year. And in that report, John Durham thanked the Attorney General for not getting involved in the investigation. The Attorney General did not begin that investigation. It happened during the Trump administration. And that special counsel, John Durham, commended the Attorney General and the Justice Department for not getting involved. And so, when we saw the rollout of the indictment, we saw that Jack Smith took the helm. He was the one who fronted the indictment. He's the one who announced it, and his name is on the investigation.
Yep. You could call it a noble effort by the Department of Justice to remove, as you put it, the whiff of any kind of conflict of interest. But for Republicans, of course, there remains a sumptuous cloud of conflict of interest, and they're going to point to it. There are other investigations, however, going on here that we should talk about. And I sense that they're all going to go on a different track. But we've got this federal indictment. We've got this case in New York. there are 3 or 4 other potential indictments down the line. Are they going to influence one another? I guess suppose they would have to coordinate calendars at some point. Talk to me about the interplay.
Sure, yeah. So we have another federal investigation into the former president and those in his orbit, Special Counsel Jack Smith's other investigation into January 6th. That is ongoing and continuing. Testimony continues in the D.C. federal courthouse. And so that, combined with this other special counsel investigation, is kind of on a dual track, if you will. We've been expecting this investigation to wrap up first, but that investigation continues. We reported last week that Steve Bannon was subpoenaed in that and has to testify before a grand jury, or is at least asked to testify before a grand jury. So we're going to keep our eye on that. And then in Georgia, there's also an investigation into the 2020 presidential election as well. That is a state investigation, not a federal investigation. And as our viewers, I'm sure, are aware, the district attorney down there in Fulton County has said that she could be bringing charges this summer. So we're going to keep a lookout for that as well. And as you said, calendars, coordination will be important as this all plays out.
We'll be covering that, and as will you, Robert Laguerre. Thank you.
Thanks.
President Biden has cleared his schedule for the day after undergoing a root canal at the White House.
And we're talking about it. The president's doctor says he reported some dental pain on Sunday. And because he's president, he's getting it taken care of right away. The White House says he planned to meet with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, and that meeting will be delayed. The president did not go under general anesthesia. These things are important when you're president of the United States, meaning the 25th Amendment was not invoked.